Today's day 4 as I bring awareness to TBIs during the month of March for TBI awareness. Just finished my 4th 5K and I'm going to provide you the fourth tip in bringing awareness to TBIs. And today I'm going to talk about COVID and TBIs. His ability to add more long-term damage onto what is already occurring. You're a patient dealing with TBIs. Yesterday I attended a webinar that was on Capitol Hill. Yesterday was Brain Injury Awareness Day on Capitol Hill. This event was sponsored by the Brain Injury Association of America. And they had a panel of 2 representatives. On the panel they had Bill Parcell, who's a Democratic representative from New Jersey. They had Don Bacon, who's a Republican representative from Nebraska. Also on the panel they had several neurologists and those who are experts in the field of treating traumatic brain injuries. And I talked a bit about this a couple months ago when I did a video on why you lose your smell if you test positive for COVID. Now the COVID virus can easily enter into the brain and break what they call the blood-brain barrier and get into your brain and get into your nervous system. And let me show you in this little model right here. So right up here is the olfactory epithelium. Its main purpose is to kind of protect and be the first line of defense and fight off any virus or contaminants that go in. But as the virus goes up the nose and it breaks through the olfactory epithelium, and a lot of older people have a weaker epithelium here, it's able to have that easy access to the brain, and that easy access to the brain allows it to get in there quickly, and once it breaks that blood-brain barrier, it's in the brain and it can get into the central nervous system. And what they're finding is that even after you have recovered from COVID, those cells can remain in the brain and stay dormant for a long time and then cause long-term effects. The neurological issues that occur when one was exposed to COVID is first encephalitis. With encephalitis is inflammation of the brain. And so that inflammation occurs when the central nervous system is trying to fight off the virus. And if you have a TBI, you can have inflammation as well. So you have the central nervous system trying to fight off the inflammation from the TBI. And at the same time, here comes this virus adding more inflammation. It makes you more susceptible for long-term cognitive issues. Then the other thing was cerebrovascular disease, things leading to strokes. Chronic cerebral hypoxia. Hypoxia is, it's the lack of oxygen to the brain. The brain needs the oxygen and you're not getting that properly because you can't breathe and you have pulmonary issues because of COVID. And while your brain is recovering from a TBI, you need that healthy amount of oxygen to help the cells repair. So you can see this is why it causes more issues for those with TBI. COVID hasn't been around a lot. There's not a lot of good information on it. And the National Institute of Health has pushed a lot of funds to support longitudinal studies to better understand the impacts of COVID and TBIs. Big takeaway of this is if you are a patient of a TBI or you work in an area where you're more likely to have a TBI, then you need to add more personal protective equipment to yourself. Be more cautious, whether that's getting the vaccine or whether that's wearing your mask. If you are a TBI patient, you're at higher risk at having long-term complications because of COVID. The National Institute of Health is working hard to collect as much information that they can on this. 2018, the Traumatic Brain Injury Reauthorization Act was established, and part of that act directed the CDC to establish a national concussion surveillance system where they're beginning to gather more data on TBIs and being able to understand them. And with COVID, this is allowing them to better collect the data and understand who is more susceptible to TBI damage and more susceptible to COVID and TBIs and things like that. But what we need to do now is just push out awareness. Let everyone know that if you are suffering from brain injury, you have a heightened risk of long-term impacts from the TBI with COVID on top.